The morning they buried their mother, the sky remained stubborn gray, unmoved, and heavy. It wasn't the kind of cold that nipped politely at your fingers. It was the kind that forced its way through seams, settled into lungs, and made itself at home in every breath. In the small town of Alderidge, silence didn't just happen, it thickened. That morning, even the crows stayed away. No wind, no beat of sun, just the damp thud of shoes pressing into soft earth, and the occasional sigh that tried too hard to pass as strength. 3 girls stood near the casket. They weren't holding hands. They didn't need to. They were tethered by something stronger, grief, unformed, still shapeless, but already present in the tightening of their jaws, the mirrored black of their coats, and the identical braids draped over their shoulders. 6 years old, born 3 minutes apart in the same flickering hospital room. Their mother had named them after women she called unshakable. There was Isla, the one with thunderstorm eyes and a spine like tempered steel. Then Mira, always quiet but never unaware, a girl who noticed everything but rarely spoke it aloud. And then Isla, who drifted between worlds, half her mind and dreams, the other half in places no one else could see. They weren't crying. Not yet. Not because they didn't want to, but because grief hadn't found its shape. It was still hovering, the way a nightmare vanishes the moment you turn on a light. Their mother had said she'd be fine. She always said that, even when her hands trembled while lifting a spoon. Even when her laughter turned thin and her eyes seemed to focus on things far away. It's just a passing thing, she said. But it wasn't. It had passed, yes, but it had taken her with it. Now she lay inside a casket polished to a gleam that seemed cruel beneath such a sullen sky. Strangers approached the girls and said things like, "She's an angel now," or "She's watching over you," as if platitudes could dull the enormity of what had happened. The girls didn't answer. Words, for them, had always needed to earn their place. That's when they saw him. He stood at the edge of the small crowd. A man who didn't look like he belonged not to the town, not to the funeral, maybe not even to the present. Tall, pale, wearing a sharply cut coat that hadn't come from any store in Alderidge. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, absurd against a cloud-thick sky. He didn't look at the casket, didn't look at the mourners. He just stood still, like something carved from stone, and only the girls noticed him. Adults, trained by years of politeness and repression, overlooked the things children still saw clearly. Isla's stare sharpened. Mira subtly moved closer to Isla, and Isla, ever unblinking, tilted her head and looked directly at him. Not frightened, just curious. When the last hymn dissolved into the mist, and the adults began drifting toward cars and murmured condolences, the man stepped forward. He didn't speak, didn't cry. He reached into his coat and laid a white envelope on top of the casket. Then he turned and walked away into the trees behind the cemetery as if he had come from nowhere and was returning to it. Isla watched until he vanished into the woods. Mira kept her eyes locked on the envelope, and Isla, barely above a whisper, said, "He's not done yet." Their aunt, Caroline, snatched the envelope before anyone else could. She didn't open it, just stuffed it into her coat pocket like it was something dangerous, something unstable. She didn't speak a word about it, just told the girls to get in the car, her jaw tight enough to crack. The house they returned to didn't feel like theirs anymore. Without their mother, everything inside seemed faded, as if even the furniture was holding its breath. The warm hum of life had vanished. Now there was only structure and quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't soot-hide accused. Caroline moved in that same day. She was meticulous, self-assured, and unapologetically in control. The girls knew she loved them. It showed in the way she pressed their uniforms, how she folded the corners of their blankets, just so. But her love had edges. It arrived with color-coded calendars and bins labeled for each of them. Meals were scheduled, lights out enforced, and free time became a regiment. Isla was the first to resist. It was in her nature. She asked questions Caroline wouldn't answer about the man at the funeral, about the envelope, about why there were no photos of their father in the house. Mira said nothing, but she watched and took notes in a little book hidden beneath her mattress dates, reactions, comments. Isla? Isla drew. Page after page of the same man. The same coat. The same unreadable eyes. Sometimes he stood in the snow. Sometimes his back was turned. But she always left his hands unfinished, as if she couldn't decide whether he was reaching for something or letting it go. 3 nights after the funeral, Isla found the envelope. She hadn't meant to. It was hidden behind legal papers in Caroline's briefcase. She didn't open it, just carried it to Mira like it might explode. The two of them stared at it for an hour before Mira whispered, "We need to know." When they asked Caroline directly, her voice became steel. "That man is no one. He doesn't matter. He left a letter," Isla said. "He left nothing worth reading," Caroline replied. And that was supposed to be the end of it. But it wasn't. Later that night, after the girls were in bed, Caroline sat on the floor of her sister's room-to-room where bedtime stories used to echo. She opened the envelope with hands that trembled more than she liked. Read the letter once. Then again, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "Not now. You don't get to do this now." Then she tore it in half. The next morning, she smiled like always. But children know. They always do. That night, Isla drew the man again, this time placing him beside their mother. They weren't touching, but they were near. And Isla whispered to the page, "He's still here." A week passed. Then 2. The envelope wasn't mentioned again, but its memory clung to the corners of the house like cobwebs no one dared clean. Caroline kept them busy. School, chores, reading time, even play was structured. But it wasn't nurture, it was distraction. Containment. Isla began rising before dawn. She'd sit at the table drawing maps in a spiral notebook. Escape routes. Ways to slip into the attic without creaking a board. Shortcuts to the library where internet access didn't require Caroline's permission. Mira started cataloging the attic. She found boxes dozens sealed and marked with dates. Their mother's things. A museum of silence. In one shoebox under a quilt, they found something, a letter postmarked from France, dated nearly 7 years ago. Handwriting unlike anything they'd seen. The return address was unfamiliar. It was signed simply L. Emery. The letter wasn't romantic. It was a question, a plea. Why hadn't she written back? Was she okay? Did she remember the sound of his voice? The way she laughed when nervous? One line had been underlined twice. "If there is more than silence between us, tell me what it is." Isla read it aloud. Mira copied the return address. Isla whispered, "He didn't know about us." That night they wrote back. The letter was short. "We are Isla, Mira, and Isla. Our mother's name was Miriam. She passed away last month. We believe you knew her. We don't know who you are, but we think you might be part of us. If you'd like to know more, we're here." They didn't sign their names. They listed only a P.O. box at the town library. The librarian didn't ask questions, just told them to bring their books back on time. Weeks passed. Then one day, an envelope arrived. Mira spotted it first. It was cream-colored, heavier than normal, with foreign postage. Addressed to AJI Box 141. They waited until after dinner, until Caroline's crime shows played quietly in the other room. Then they huddled under a quilt and opened it. "To the 3 who wrote to me," it began. "I was not expecting your words, but I have read them more than once. Your mother, Miriam, meant something to me I never found again. If it is true what you say, if you were her daughters, then I would be honored to know you. I don't know what I can offer, but if you want to speak, I will answer. I live now near the sea in the north. Please write again. Signed, L. Emery." He hadn't said father. He hadn't said yes, but he didn't deny it either. And he'd answered. That was more than they had hoped for. They wrote again, this time with stories. About Briar Hollow. About how their moms sang show tunes while folding laundry. About Isla's bike crash into the lilac bush. About how Isla hummed when nervous. They didn't ask why he left. They weren't ready. His letters came back slow but steady. Handwritten. Careful. Thoughtful. He lived alone. He taught part-time. He had a crooked fence he never fixed. Perfection, he wrote, was never the point. Then, one morning, a small package arrived. 3 leather journals, 1 violet, 1 green, 1 gray, each tied with ribbon and labeled by name. Inside, for your thoughts. your drawings, your questions. I will keep reading. Elle? Caroline said nothing. She knew, but she let the letters continue. Maybe she remembered what it was like to wonder. Or maybe she saw what the girls had gained, shoulders less tight, eyes that didn't dart as much. One night, Caroline pulled out a letter from her own shoebox. One of the last he had sent before Miriam stopped writing. It said, "If you ever change your mind, I'll still be here. Not waiting. Just open." She whispered, "Well, they found him, Mary." Then, one day, a new letter came. "Would it be all right if I came and meet you?" He asked. Not a demand, just a question. Isla read it 3 times, then looked at her sisters. "We have to ask Caroline." They found her on the porch, tea steaming in her mug. They handed her the letter. She read it, silent. "If he comes," she said finally, "it's on my terms. Your safety first. You understand?" They nodded. She looked out at the snow-dusted trees. "Then write him back," she said. And they did.